It's been 5 years since I left Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States of America, and moved to the continent of Africa. It's been going on 3 years since I have been living in South Africa, and it still is not as easy as I know I make it look. And in this video, I'm gonna tell you about the things that I've been experiencing here in South Africa, some of the challenges, and ultimately, am I gonna stay? Is it worth it? And if you're considering South Africa, why you may want to reconsider. Welcome to the channel. My name is Ashley Cleveland. On this channel, Ashley in Africa, I share my experience of living, moving, and doing business in East and Southern Africa. I help global investors diversify their investments across East and Southern Africa strategically, legally, and with a due diligence process that most investors don't even know exists. People's biggest concern when investing in Africa is, where do I start and who can I trust? And so we work with clients from day one, ensuring that they're informed and that they're protected once they're ready to make their first, second, or even third investment. And so if that sounds interesting to you, be sure to like this video and continue to listen on, and even subscribe to the channel if you feel moved by the video or other content that you see on this channel. And so yep, you heard it right. I just celebrated 5 years of leaving Atlanta, Georgia, and landing here on the continent of Africa. It hasn't always been here in South Africa, but it's been almost 3 years in January that I will have been living in South Africa. And I can say it isn't as easy as I make it look. And so in this video, I'm going to share with you, again, some of the challenges and some of the things that I think are a bit difficult. But first, let me share with you why I decided to leave everything I know, everything that I knew, everyone that I knew, and just go into a foreign land with 2 girls. All right, so if you're new to the channel, I decided to leave Atlanta, Georgia in 2020 during the time where the world stood still. And there were a lot of reasons why I decided to leave Atlanta during that time. But I will say that for many people, COVID was a life-changing experience. Some people lost family, some people made a lot of money, and some people are still struggling with the ramifications and the things that happened from COVID. But I will say for me, COVID was one of those times that transformed my life and pushed me to do something different with my life, pushed me to recognize that things are not going to ever go back to normal. Whatever you decide for your life to look like from here is up to you. So there weren't many countries at the time that were open to Americans, and I decided to move my girls and my family to Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, where I had never visited the continent. I had never even been to Tanzania. But I knew, hey, this doesn't work out. I can always head back to Atlanta. It's not going to be that big of a deal, but my spirit knew otherwise. And so when I made that decision, very quickly and hastily, there were things that were really important to me that I was missing, that I was not experiencing in my home country at the time. Number one, the biggest reason why I left the US when I did was because I just did not feel safe. I no longer felt safe, and that feeling of unsafety was affecting my mental and physical health. I had been diagnosed with anxiety and depression, and I was terrified of going to the grocery store. I was terrified of going to the malls. I was terrified of really going anywhere in public. Festivals, outdoor events that I once loved to do. The gun violence in America had just gotten so outrageous. The police brutality had gotten so outrageous, and the political division was so tense that I never wanted to leave the house. And granted, COVID was a time where most people could stay inside. Atlanta was open pretty much after about 30 days. But I just still couldn't do it. I was debilitated with anxiety when I thought about leaving my house with my children, terrified. I didn't want to have to carry around a gun to feel safe. I didn't want to have to, you know, have a radical acceptance that this is just what it is. And I didn't want to continue fighting a fight that has been fought for 400, 500 years. I was tired. I was tired and I wanted safety. And while I had done a lot of work to try to create safety within, the environment that I was living in just wasn't one that I felt like was one that I wanted to stay in. So safety was one of the biggest issues, and it's looking like it's hasn't gotten any better. It's, you know, the public display of violence is something that America does very well. And for its citizens, it's something that has just become the norm that people are desensitized to. But I didn't want that, and I didn't want my children to have that experience, and I wanted them to be in an environment where I knew that they could walk outside and I wouldn't have to worry about them. They could play outside and I wouldn't have to worry. And ever since making that move, that's been something that I have found. Safety has been everywhere. It's been abundant. Now, I won't say that there aren't places that are unsafe, right? Every place has challenges and difficulties, but the overwhelming data, the overwhelming statistics of violence and day-to-day reality of that is just not something that I have to deal with now, whether I was, you know, of course not living in Tanzania, but also in South Africa. I have not experienced ever feeling unsafe, ever. And yes, while I do live in Cape Town, in a very beautiful part of Cape Town, my friends live all over South Africa. I've been into the rural areas. I've been to several townships. And with the people around me, I have never, ever felt unsafe. So that was number one, safety, huge concern for me. The next thing was growth. So I'd say back in 2018, I had a huge opportunity to work with the the US headquarter pitch for Amazon. And during that time in my career, we worked with a lot of tech companies and a lot of utility agencies. We got to work with a lot of different organizations in the creative industry, in the logistics industry, in the finance industry, in the tech industry, all with the goal of securing Amazon's headquarters in Atlanta. And it was during a session with Google and Georgia Power, these two separate sessions. One, Google had done a session that showed the education dynamic of the education systems in Atlanta, Georgia, and the metro. Ooh, scared me. The window just blew shut. And basically it showed how Atlanta's education system was preparing, or lack thereof, the children, was preparing or not preparing the children and the students and the learners for a future in tech, in the careers that are going to be available, or that are available now, but that also will be available in the future. And it showed this map of Metro Atlanta, and it showed kind of the areas in which the population was more likely to be ready for the future of work. And the numbers were staggering. They were so small. So ultimately, what we left that session with was talent in Atlanta was not going to be equipped for the work of the future in technology. Now, media, creative industry, that's a different story, but technology was just not one of them. And as I saw the world moving towards technology, I recognized that Atlanta, Georgia was not the place to educate my children so that they could be competitive in the future landscape. Okay, so fast forward, growth of the economy. growth in all things, the economy, opportunities, mindset, that wasn't available in my mind in Atlanta, which was a place that I thought I was never going to leave. Listen, I was ATL all day. Like, you know, I had been there for 13 years. There was no reason for me to leave Atlanta. I had a great career. I had a great life. I had influence socially. But that session with Google shifted my perspective. And then it was the session with Georgia Power that talked about the privatization of and the monopolization of energy and the challenges that would come when bringing these high-tech companies and what that would look like for real estate. So when I looked at that and I thought about that and I said, okay, well, where are the places that these things aren't happening, right? Where are the places that growth and expansion are happening? And in that very moment, in 2018, I knew it wasn't in Atlanta. So that was actually 2017. So I wanted to be in an environment where I saw growth. And when I started doing my research on the continent of Africa, I saw there were plenty of countries that were growing fast, but South Africa specifically, while the numbers look small when you look at GDP growth, infrastructure, companies coming to the country, people coming to South Africa from all over the world, talent coming and being created based on the institutions that are here and the way that they are developing their students for a global future and a future on the continent of Africa, which is the fastest growing market in the world, with infrastructure, with development, with companies, with talent. It just made sense. It just made sense. So I wanted to be in an environment where growth was actively happening, not contracting, where the middle class was growing, not contracting, where economic growth is on the rise and companies are looking to come to, people, talent are looking to come to, and it's an environment that isn't perfect, but is ripe for innovation. So that was the second reason why I decided to leave everything I knew and come to a place where I knew no one and knew nothing, except for the research that I had done online. The second reason, that was the second reason. The third reason that I left Atlanta was I realized that the cost of living at the time, I just accepted that that's what it was. But once I realized that there was an opportunity to live in a country where I was gonna get more for less, right? Like, yes, some of these countries, South Africa, high taxes for sure. But people get access to healthcare here, free healthcare, free education. There are maternal rights here, maternity leave, paternity leave. The citizens in the community is supported in a way that you don't see happening in the US. Again, is it perfect? Absolutely not. But when you see legislation passing for fathers to also have leave when they give birth, when their wives or the women, the mothers of their children give birth, the government put into place so that fathers as well as mothers have legal leave and pay when they in fact have children, right? That was huge. That was huge for me. But the cost of living, right? What does it cost for me to live here? How much is it going to take from me? Working 60 hours a week, 80 hours a week is so normal in America. It's not normal here in South Africa. It's just not. People are blown away. Like, why are people working that long? For the most part, people rock up to work and by 2:30, 3 o'clock, it's time to go. Now, if you're an entrepreneur, that looks different. Mondays and Fridays might be optional depending on how Groove went or if there was a bride or something like that. But for the most part, yes, people do work 40 hours a week. But an excessive 60-80, unless you're an entrepreneur, is just unheard of. And so the cost of living isn't just high from a financial perspective in America, it's from a physical, emotional, and spiritual perspective, because what you have to give, especially your time, which is your most valuable asset, the time it takes for people to be able to afford just the bare necessities in America, is a cost that I just was no longer willing to pay. And so I wanted to live in an environment where there was more of a quality of life, work-life balance, and an environment where, yeah, there may be, more expensive areas to live, but ultimately, as a whole, the cost of living doesn't require you to forego everything just to pay for the bare necessities. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. I hope you're finding value in this content. Let me know, like this video, share it with someone who finds value in it as well. So again, the reason why I left, the first reason, safety. I no longer feel safe in America, like till this day. I'm in a group chat with hundreds of other diasporans from all over the world. And the fact that people are asking questions about how they have to strategically engage with ICE when they return to their country, to the US, after being in Africa for how many ever months or years, like, I would never put myself in that position. My nervous system doesn't deserve that. Why am I going to have to figure out and have the anxiety of going into a country that could, if they wanted to, kidnap me from the street and have no recourse, and people everywhere are gonna go about their day? Like, that's wild to me. And it wasn't something I was willing to deal with 5 years ago, and it's absolutely something I'm not willing to deal with now. And I don't feel any of that here in South Africa. And then the next reason was I wanted to be around growth, expansion, innovation. And while people will say America is the place for tech and building and innovation, nah, it's the place to figure out solely how to gain capital. And that's it. South Africa and the rest of the continent, in my experience, they are fixing big problems. There are big problems to be solved on this continent. And the innovation that's taking place here is not just about capital. It is about problem solving. And that's the type of innovation that I wanted to be a part of. The next reason was cost of living. Not only is it going to cost more financially to live in the US, it costs mentally, spiritually, and emotionally to be there. And I no longer wanted to pay that price. So I decided to leave and move to South Africa. So the next reason I decided to move, which is kind of in alignment with number 3, is I wanted to live a value-aligned life. I wanted to live a value-aligned life. I wanted to do things that were in alignment with my values. Well, what does that mean? So I give this example often, but I was going through this experience with my therapist. This was maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago. No, not 8. Definitely about 6, 7. And she asked me for the first time ever, what are your values? And I was shook. I did not know how to answer that question. So she said, I'm going to email you a document. It's going to have a list of values, and I want you to pick them. So did that, went home, saw this list, hundreds of things, right? So I wrote a few things, and on that list had family. I value family so much. And there was also health, and there was also, family, peace, and adventure. Those are the 3 that I can remember. There were several more. But these were the ones specifically that she spoke about that we dove deeper into. So I said family. She said, okay, how much time do you spend with your family a week? No, she said, how much time do you spend with your family per day? And I was like, an hour here, maybe an hour in the morning on the way to school. But that's pretty hectic, and we're rushing. And, by the time I get home, after, around 6, 7 o'clock, it's pretty much time for everybody to, that's on an early day. If I get home at 7, most of the time I'm getting home at 8, 9 o'clock, not a lot of time is being spent with family. So maybe per day, like an hour, maybe two, maybe a week, maybe 5 days a week. But I was also going to school at Georgia Tech for my data analytics and visualization certifications. So I was spending less than 10 hours a week with my family, but I valued family. And she said, that's not lining up. She was like, that's not lining up. And it wasn't, because I was spending more time commuting to work. I was spending more time at work, obviously, more time at school, working on those things, and more time just hustling in the cycle. That was a lot. And she told me, hey, that doesn't make sense. That's an out of alignment. You're out of alignment with that value, because you say you value family, but you're spending less than 10 hours a week. How is that possible? Oh, well, I do get to see my family every other year in Boston, She's like, oh, okay. So when I looked at my calendar and I looked at my money, and it said showing values of family, it didn't align. That was the first one. The second one, adventure. Okay, you love adventure. How does that look? How are you adventuring these days? Oh, I might take a solo trip once a year. I love traveling, and so I would take a solo trip. Mostly, I think at the time, the relationship that I was in, my partner at the time, he didn't really like to travel, and he worked a lot, so I didn't have time to travel. But I would take solo trips, and I loved that. But I wasn't really doing major trips. I was going to resorts, and that was okay, but I wasn't experiencing anything really new. I found myself going kind of for rehabilitation, oh, I need a break. But it wasn't really adventure. So she said, okay, well, how do you value adventure if you're not actively giving me an adventure? When was the last time you had one? And I couldn't answer that. And so, again, I was out of alignment. The next thing around peace. Well, I was coming to her once a week, and I was going to a couple therapists twice a week. And I was also stressed out working 80 hours a week. She said, so where's the peace? How are you finding peace? Well, I thought peace was self-medicating, and that quickly became clear that it wasn't peace. And so again, there was no alignment with my time or my finances that showed that I valued peace. I was spending time in chaos. So where's the peace? How do you value those things? So essentially, living a life aligned with your values means when you say you value something, you can match that up with your calendar and your finances. And if you can't, then you do not value that thing. So how do you now live a life in alignment with your values? Because not living in alignment with your values does mean stress, does mean anxiety, does mean depression, does even mean diabetes, hypertension, high blood pressure, chronic stress, a whole lot of other things that we are seeing in the bodies of women and men. When you are out of alignment in any way, but especially with your values and in that environment, it will destroy you. Slowly but surely, you will suffer. And I no longer wanted suffering. I wanted adventure. I wanted time with my family, and I wanted peace. And when I tell you, check, 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 adventure has been a regular scheduled event, peace, currently and regularly, even when the children are driving me crazy. But family, because I get to spend so much time with my children. We have breakfast together. We take walks during the week. We spend an enormous amount of time together. And I value that. And it's time that I will never, ever, ever get back, that I get to give to them right now in these formative years where I'm teaching them things, where we're telling stories, where we're laughing, we're playing games, we're getting to know each other. They're getting to know me, the healthiest version of me, all because I made a decision to live a life in alignment with my values. And so with all of that, I still wanted access to big city living. Listen, I know there's a lot of criticism around, you know, not living in the cities these days and kind of unplugging. And yeah, I get it. That's necessary regularly for me too. But I wanted big city access for many reasons, because as an entrepreneur, I need access to global thinkers, big thinking, big minds, big goals, big life. These are the things that motivate me. Going out with my friends, community, health, like luxury, like those things are exciting. They make me happy. You can see me even smiling just thinking about it. You know, that type of big city access for me was something I knew I needed, but I knew I wanted to stay in Africa. And so at the time, when I came to Johannesburg, I was sold. First visit, sold. Took me a couple years to make the plan to move, but I knew Johannesburg was key, was prime. I since then have moved to Cape Town, which isn't as fast or big city vibe as Joburg, but I will still say that the things that I need out of a city, I still feel like I get living here in Cape Town, plus more. Plus more. So those are some of the reasons why I decided to move from Atlanta, Georgia to South Africa. There are a few more, but for now, we'll leave it there because this video is already getting really long. But I do want to share with you, even though I am 1,000% happy with the decision that I made in moving, there are still some challenges. And you know, I'll share those with you now. So if you're finding value in this video, please be sure to like it and share it with someone. And yeah, I'm going to talk a lot more about the reasons why I decided to move and why you probably are also considering that move. But I'm going to go deeper into that, as well as other people will be sharing their stories during the Travel, Move, Do Business South Africa online conference that's happening next week. I think it's November 15th and 16th online. The link is in the description. I'm going to be speaking, but we've got some South Africans that are going to be speaking about business opportunities, the political climate, the investment climate, my personal attorney. We're going to be talking about, you know, all of the things, immigration, long-term stays, how to buy property, how to open bank accounts and invest long-term. And then you're going to hear from other people that I've worked with that have done it, you know, that are here in South Africa, or they're actively making their ways and they're purchasing property, they're establishing businesses and community and a network after working with me and a couple of other advisors that I've connected them to. So go ahead and click the link in the description if you want to join us online. You're going to get so much value from that. I'm telling you, it's going to completely blow you away. And if you are really, really serious about your journey, definitely consider the VIP option, because you'll get to talk to me one-on-one. Well, in the group setting, you'll get to ask me a direct question on both days, and you're going to get access to those replays so that you can keep them and share them with your family and friends along the way. All right, so cons, because there are a couple of challenges that do make this decision tough sometimes, and not as easy as I probably make it look. Number one, the systems and processes of getting things done is not as efficient as I'm used to. And this has required a complete overhaul of patience. Like, you have absolutely got to get strong up in that patience. And I'll say the beautiful part of this was I spent time in an environment in Tanzania, which was less developed, more of a, less of a big city feel, in the way that I'm coining it big city, meaning access to amenities and luxuries that are found in a lot of major global big cities, right? So global big city feel is what I mean around that. But I had already experienced kind of a complete distance from that living in Dar es Salaam. So I had this deconditioned, I'd stripped myself of a lot of those expectations. So my patience muscle was on 1,000 by the time I moved to South Africa. But there are still times, I'd say even the other day, we got our meter exchanged here at the place. So this used to have a meter where we would pay the power, the electricity, every month after usage. Some buildings are still set up that way. Some homes are still set up that way, where some homes prepaid meter. So the city decided they wanted to change the meter, and yeah, the communication, there was no communication. I was emailing. They told me, if you don't contact us by this date, we're going to come and disconnect your electricity. But nobody was responding to the email. Nobody was responding. And eventually we ended up working it out, but because it always works out. So you have to know that it always works out. But it was again a testament of patience. And this is a regular thing. Leave your expectations at the door, because patience is something you need to focus on. I'd say that. So the systems and the process efficiencies are not there, but this is one of the reasons why working with me is so helpful for my clients, they say, because I mitigate that, and I am the intermediary that is able to help the advisors know the expectations of our investors, of our team, of our clients, so that we kind of level that out. But I always onboard clients and let them know, hey, this is Africa, and everything does not move the way you're used to it moving in the US. So that's a really huge challenge that I'd say most people struggle with, right? Definitely aren't prepared for and struggle with. The next con that I find that is so disturbing and very frustrating at the same time is the overinflation of crime. When I speak to South Africans and they ask me, what are you doing here? Why are you here in South Africa? Like, isn't the US way better? And I speak about the number one reason why I moved here, which was to feel safe. I no longer felt safe in my home country. And I tell them the experiences that I have had personally, that my family members have also had, and things that are actively happening now. They can't even fathom it. They're like, what? How? Really? That would never happen here. Wow, I thought our crime was bad. And so, yeah, is there crime in South Africa? Absolutely. But the way that it's inflated, I think it's kind of overdone. It's over. I was in a car the other day when I'm in the Uber and they're listening to the news. I often ask them to turn it off, because you can literally be in the car for 30 minutes and you'll hear the same story that's devastating, it's tragic, that might be extremely violent. You'll hear that story 2 to 3 times within 30 minutes. And that's not okay. It keeps the people on anxiety. And yeah, it kind of regurgitates things that aren't necessarily true, that program you to believe a thing that, and again, I'm not saying there isn't crime or there aren't safety challenges in certain parts of this country. It is not perfect. It is a developing nation that is actively growing, right? But I do find the constant references to crime in the media a bit overbearing, a bit overwhelming. So much so that I don't even listen to the news here at all, like zero, because it reminds me a lot of news in the US, and it's not something that I'm fond of. So that's definitely a huge con. The next thing is, I'd say the city planning for this city, South Africa and Cape Town and Johannesburg, because the cities are growing so fast, there is not the traffic, the roads, the infrastructure is not sustainable for the volume of people that are coming into these cities. And so it creates a lot of issues with traffic, a lot of issues with roads, infrastructure. But I will say that as I've been traveling outside of the major cities and in some of the other provinces, they're getting it right. I was just in Northwest, Rustenburg, Mafeking, and the infrastructure, the roads, the development, you see, they're honking. They're honking. This road out here is so interesting because you got these massive homes, beautiful homes, buildings, but to be able to go in and out of your space is so hard because there's only one lane. They're one lane roads and it just causes a really big issue with traffic. But I'd say that the expansion of these cities, and as the rural areas are getting more developed, the infrastructure is getting stronger. So they're learning from their mistakes, and the city planning efforts are getting better, but they got a ways to go. um, those are my cons. Not a whole lot, you know. Am I going back? Absolutely not. Why? Why would I? When I've achieved peace, I've achieved the value of adventure, the values of spending time with my family, and the value of living a life. Yeah, that's in alignment with my values. I feel safe. My cost of living isn't as high as it would be, and my quality of life is way better. I'm in an economy that's growing, that I'm actively taking part in, that I'm actively investing in, and I'm seeing dividends. And yeah, I get to live in a global city. So it's been great. But it has come with challenges. It has come with challenges, as I've shared. And, but ultimately the cost of growth is discomfort. So I'm taking these challenges with stride because I'm living in an environment that is in alignment with my values, where I feel treated best. And so if that's something that you're interested in exploring more of, and you want to hear from people that have done it, and you want to hear how to do it successfully so that you don't waste time, waste money, or essentially put yourself in a position that ultimately has you heading back to the place that you work so hard to get out of, you absolutely want to join us this session this time on the 15th and the 16th of November online. So you can join us from anywhere in the world. And if you aren't able to make the session, you can have access to the replays. VIP will have access to the replay for a year. General access will have access to the replay for 24 hours. So you can catch the content and the information because it's so valuable. Head to the link in the description. You can see reviews from people that have attended in years prior, as well as just getting feedback on the things that are interesting to you. So if you got questions and you want to know if they'll be answered in depth during the session or in an upcoming video, if it's something that I feel like, it's just an easy question, I'll share a video with you where I answer that question, or I'll even answer it in the comments. But if you are looking to strategically make your move to South Africa, or you want to definitely travel here long term or do business in one of the strongest economies in Africa, you absolutely want to join us for the Travel, Move, Do Business South Africa online conference. And so I cannot wait to see you there. Ask me a question live in the VIP. It's going to be huge for you. And yeah, I cannot wait to see you there. So until the next video, I'll see you soon.